What I'd like to talk to you now about is what your law school application will consist of, and what are the most important elements of that law school application. So, in your law school application, of course, you're going to be judged on your undergraduate GPA and your LSAT score. But as you know, you're also going to be required to submit a personal statement. You will also have to submit your resume. So you'll be judged on what work experience you have. So it's important to law school admissions officers that they be attracting people who have real-world experience and or an interesting or diverse undergraduate background. They're going to be looking at the courses you took in undergrad. And did you challenge yourself? Did you take upper-level classes that forced you to really think, right? Because those are the types of people that they want to draw to their school. Of course, you're going to have to submit letters of recommendation. And it's good to remember that if you're still in undergraduate school, to start talking to your professors now about your plans to apply to law school, why it's important to you, and kind of, without being cheesy about it, start to develop that relationship with those professors so that when you do ask for that letter, they know who you are and they know why they want to write a great letter for you. Of course, you may have the opportunity to talk about other things such as diversity, why you would make a diverse candidate. And for those of you women out there, though it used to be a little bit anomalous that women would apply to law school, not at all the case anymore. The statistics come out at about 50-50 in terms of law school applicants. So that doesn't necessarily make you diverse. It could make you diverse if you say why the experience of being a woman influences your ability to succeed as a legal practitioner, et cetera, et cetera. You could certainly use that in a diversity statement. But just to let you know, this is not necessarily always about your ethnicity or your cultural heritage. It can also be simply about your diverse life experiences. I mean, let's say when you were 12, your parents took you on a trip around the world. I have friends of the family who did that with their 12-year-old, and he consequently, I mean, his entire life changed because of that. So even if you don't have parents who took you on a trip around the world, you still may have interesting life experiences that you can bring out in your personal statement. So what are the most important aspects of your admissions file? You may take a guess that the LSAT score is the most important thing. And even though a lot of people think that, undergraduate GPA tends to be just slightly higher valued than the LSAT score. But here's the thing. If you're already in your third or fourth year of school, or if you've already graduated, there's not a whole lot you can do to dramatically change your GPA. But there is a whole lot you can do to prepare for the LSAT. And that's why studying for the LSAT is so incredibly important, vital for your chances of getting into a good school. Of course, the other elements that we already talked about are important, and you can't undermine any of them. In particular, your personal statement is really your one chance to stand out from other candidates. You want to start writing your personal statement long before your application deadlines. You want to be sure that that statement goes through a number of revisions. You have a lot of people read over it, but also kind of think about your topic for your personal statement. It tends to be that people like to write about why they want to go to law school. And usually it's that they want to try and save the world in some manner. Now, I'm not going to say anything against saving the world through being a lawyer, because I'm a huge proponent of that. But, you know, when so many people are writing their personal statements about why they want to go to law school, it tends to get a little monotonous for the people who are reading the statements, and it doesn't really say the thing that admissions officers need to know, which is why you would be a good student at their school. What makes you a good law school candidate, and kind of why you're going to be able to contribute to the learning atmosphere at that school. So that's one thing to think about. Of course, you can also write about why you're a diverse and interesting candidate, and you can write about many topics, but the important thing is to make sure that you're, like I said, starting in on that early. So let's talk a little bit about how your LSAT scores affect your chances for admission. We're going to take just a fairly average school. We're going to take Syracuse University, and we're going to look at its U.S. News & World Report rankings. In 2006, it was ranked within the top 100 schools. In 2007, it dropped a little bit out of the top 100, but still it's pretty close, right? So let's just say you're an average student. You're a B student. You have a 3.0 GPA, and let's take an average LSAT score. 50th percentile LSAT would be a 151. Your chances of getting into Syracuse with those statistics going to be about 30 or 40%. Now let's say you're a little bit of an above average student. You have a 3.5 GPA, but let's keep your LSAT score at a 151. That boosts your chances of getting into Syracuse to 50 or 60%, about a 1 in 2 chance, right? That's not bad. But let's think about what happens if we'll take you back to a 3.0 GPA and pretend that you were able to increase your score from a 151 to 158. That is an entirely doable LSAT score improvement. You all of a sudden have an 80 to 85% shot at getting into Syracuse. So you see how, even though you, like I said, you may not be able to do anything about your GPA, but you can do something about your LSAT score, and we're talking about a much better chance at getting into schools. We could also think about, what if you're trying to shoot for a top 25 school, like UCLA. In order to get into UCLA, you've got to be an above average student. Let's say you have a 3.5 GPA. And let's say you're starting out with a great LSAT score, a 163. That puts you in about the 90th percentile for LSAT. You still only have a 10 to 20% shot at getting into UCLA. It's tough, it's a state school, so consequently if you're coming from out of state, it's pretty hard to get into that school. But let's say you bump your score up, your LSAT score, to a 170. Now you've got about a 40 to 50% shot at getting into UCLA. So again, that 7 points on your score is going to give you a much better shot at that school. So to improve your admissions chances, we recommend that you study for at least 2, but usually much more than that, months for the LSAT. It's good to make sure that you're really logging that time and that you're using that time to study for the LSAT effectively. Like I said, you want to build those relationships with professors now. You want to start talking to them early about writing a letter for you so that they're not taken by surprise and so they don't have to write a letter hurriedly at the end. It's also important, if you're still in school, to keep at it. Try to get really great grades in the last semester or two, because an upward trend in your GPA can look really good. It shows that, even if you kind of messed around in your first year, that you're committed and that you're taking those higher level classes or your upper level classes seriously. And just a word on multiple LSAT scores. If you remember, about 5 years ago, the ABA changed their recommendations to law schools. Up until that point, the ABA had recommended that law schools take the average of all of your LSAT scores when they're making, that they keep the average in mind when they're making admissions decisions. But now the ABA recommends that law schools look just at your highest score, not necessarily at the average. But law schools are free to ignore that advice. It's just advice from the ABA. And there are some schools who have said, no, flat out, we're going to look at the average still. Now, the fact of the matter is, even if the law school is looking primarily at your top score, they're still going to see all of your other scores within the last, it's either 3 or 5 years. So just know that you want to know that you're ready when you take the LSAT. You want to feel confident that you know you're going to score well. And that's why you prepare so much before you take the LSAT. It's not like other standardized tests where you can just take it multiple times and only your most recent score will show up. Not at all the case.